Okay, starting on making a support for the engine. I don't have any flat plate, so I'm going to cut a little piece out of this channel. So I got the little base bolted on with 4 bolts, and then I welded these 2 little gussets on, and they go through the correct mounting hole. The bolt's too small, but I'll get a better one. So I think I have adequate support now for the motor. And now I have a place I can drill or weld or do whatever I want to, where I couldn't really do that to the motor. So one more step toward having the motor installed. In this build, the chain's going to run pretty much vertically from the engine, so I had to remove a fin that's part of the engine castings to give it some clearance. And again, because I'm running the chain vertically, and the little motor was built to have the chain coming out the back like a little motorcycle, it's too close to the casting elements beneath the sprocket. They have a weird little connection that holds the sprocket on the shaft, and I was able to take it off and swap it around, put the sprocket on the outside, put the connector on the inside, and run the bolts from the inside to the outside. Seemed to work fine, and it gave me about another 3/8 of clearance, which made everything hunky-dory, I hope. I also welded the 2 angles you see on the bottom of the little plate that I bolted to the bottom of the engine. Pretty much arbitrary. I really didn't know or don't know which direction or how they're going to fit. I know I needed something to weld to, so I found these 2 angles. They're both the same length, and I stuck them up there and welded them on. Probably shouldn't 100% welded them, but I did, and my plan is to use those to support the engine. See how it comes out from there. Okay, that should be plenty of clearance. I'm having a little difficulty here. The motor needs to go this way to get the sprocket to line up, but then I hit my bolts on the sprocket's bolted to. I don't want to cut those studs shorter in case I have to put a spacer behind the sprocket to straighten it out. And I can't go down as much as I want because I'm hitting that pillar block bearing. So I think I'm just going to cut this angle all the way off and put this flat bar. It's going to be about right here, so it's centered between the pillar block and these bolts, and it'll be, I still have these nuts on the bottom of the support thing to deal with. So I'm going to back up a little bit, set the motor down, unbolt the little stand, and go from there. So one of the few things I welded 100% was one that I had to cut off. But anyway, I didn't use the flat bar. I ended up just taking that angle and turning it the other way around. And that's going to work good. Yeah, I had to cut a notch in the front of it because it's either an old drain hole or some kind of service nut on the bottom there. But no big deal. Now, I got the motor exactly where I want it. Sprocket lines up. I got it as far back as I possibly can, so I want to make an engine mount, but I got all this junk in the way, so I'm not sure what to do. I may just put some temporary welds back to my welding table to hold it in place, because if I move this little board, it slides. If I move the 4x4, it moves because it's hanging. So I think I might do that. I think I might weld it to the table and get this dunnage out the way so I can figure out what I'm going to do for the final how to bolt the motor down. Okay, a little janky, but I got a vertical here, and I got it welded top and welded to the table. I got a vertical there welded to the table and welded to the engine mount, and I got a horizontal here welded to the frame and to that vertical. And then I have, well, here's another vertical, and in the front corner I just have a horizontal welded to the frame and welded to the engine mount. So I think I can remove all of my wooden blocks and continue work on this engine mount. Okay, now that I got the engine held up by the little temporary junk, I'm going to put this angle here. It'll be bolted, so this will be how to remove the engine. And I'm going to extend these 2 angles. It's a funky angle, but I'm going to put a little piece here, I'm going to put a piece at the bottom, and then I'm going to fill these sides in so it'll be a little man-made angle connecting this to this, and then the back half will be done. I have to switch around and do the front. So I got the back end tacked together where it won't move. Before I take it off, I'm going to drill my holes through the frame. On the front end, I am making progress. I got this little plate tacked to the end of the two angles, and I have this angle that I'm going to weld right there. So I'll have a bolt here and a bolt here, and I'll put a little gusset on this end, like triangulate this and triangulate that, try to strengthen it up a little bit. But this is fun. I'm not waiting for anything to come in the mail. I have everything I need for several days of work, so I'm enjoying this right now. So we're all tacked together and the holes are drilled, and this angle is old bed frame material, and man is it hard to drill. It's so hard. The square tubing is easy. And this is all tacked together, and this one's drilled, but this one's just marked because I can't fit the drill in there. So I'm going to take it all apart and weld it up and paint it today. Cut a plywood base for the quote-unquote engine room, and it is going to go underneath here, so I have to remove the shaft again. And I think I'm going to try to make this the last time I remove the shaft. I welded some little stops to get the pillar block bearings in the same spot when I put them back. I fit the grease zerk. This one fit okay. This plug fit okay. This grease zerk fit okay, but there's no room to get this one, so I'm probably just weld this hole shut. I'm going to go ahead and put some grease on the inside, and I'm going to caulk those little cracks so the grease can't leak out, and probably put some paint because this is just steel, pressed steel. So it's coming apart hopefully one more time. And before I put the plywood down, I'm going to paint this top surface and cross my fingers that I don't have to take this plywood off again. I'm not going to paint anything else because I still have brackets and stuff to weld. So let's take this thing off. So we're using this mess and it stinks to high heaven, but apparently it's good. So I was pretty sure this problem was going to happen. No matter how accurate you try to lay out something by hand and drill by hand, it's not the same as having a milling machine or a lathe to do your work. So when I put this sprocket on, it was not centered on the shaft. The teeth would get higher and lower and higher and lower. So what I did was the hole in the sprocket that the bolt goes through, I drilled it a little oversized, and then I put these little spacers on the bolts, and the hole in the spacer is exact. So I loosened up the nuts a little bit. I kept tapping it around until I get what I hope is acceptable amount of I hope the roundness factor is acceptable. And now I'm going to put a little tack between the sprocket and that spacer, and that will keep the sprocket from moving later on. And then I'll tighten the bolts back up and we'll go forward from there and see how it works. I guess worst case scenario, I can take all this apart and bring it to a machine shop and have it done right, but we'll try to muddle through with what we got. So the first coat of epoxy paint came out pretty dang ugly, but it's good stuff and it's very hard. And I'm going to go ahead and bolt the little support to the engine, and it's maybe the last time. It may not have to come off anymore. I got the chain cut and reassembled, and the closest link I could get to work is still too loose. I'm going to solve that by putting a shim under the engine mount, maybe front and back, or maybe just back. I'm going to play with it and see. Here we are cutting out a little piece of aluminum to put under the engine mount to lift up the front. You can kind of see in the background I have a few blocks under the back of the engine block, but it's not quite enough, so we're going to put some in the front. Whew, that's too tight. Okay, boys and girls, my little Chinese engine with 3 speeds forward, 1 reverse, automatic clutch, electric start, built-in alternator is mounted on the engine mount. It's bolted down tight, and it's bolted to the rear platform. Chain is on. and aligned. It may be a little bit loose, so I may have to add some shims. It'll probably stretch a little bit right in the beginning. I was able to get the sprocket tight, and I was able to get the disc straight through. I don't know if you can see those little copper shims up in there, through that, and also some heat, warping it with some heat. Okay, one thing I wasn't counting on, I was planning on using the gas tank that came with the riding mower. If the carburetor's up so high, that would, I think, put this thing up too high, so I'm probably going to have to find a gas tank that lays down flat. I'm sure it's got to be higher than the carburetor. So we'll need to address that. We need to address the wiring that came with the motor. That ought to be interesting. And I need an exhaust, which I'll probably buy because it's a weird little fitting up in there.